I just wanted my son to look at me the way he used to. I'm sorry. What did you say it was worth? $10,000. My hands froze. Not because of the number, but because of the silence that followed. Silence that, deep down, I already knew was the end of something. I'm Martha LeBlanc, and this was supposed to be a good Thanksgiving. Nothing fancy, just me, a home-cooked casserole, and the hope that maybe my son would finally look me in the eye like he used to. Not with impatience, not like I was a stray dog who wandered into his life, but like a son who remembered who raised him. I'd been living alone since my husband, Martin, passed 5 years ago. Our little house in Baton Rouge had grown quieter every year, fewer phone calls, fewer holidays. But Ryan, he'd always promised. Don't worry, Ma. Someday we'll do something big. I'll make you proud. Now at 42, he was the CEO of some fancy tech startup in Austin. News articles called him a rising mind in AI. His LinkedIn said he was on the cover of Tech South. I didn't really know what that meant, but I was proud. Quietly, stubbornly proud. So this year, I decided I'd visit. I called ahead, of course. Left a message. No reply, but I convinced myself he was just busy. I made his favorite sweet potato casserole with the little marshmallows on top, wrapped it in foil, packed my bag, and caught the 6 a.m. Greyhound. The ride was long. My knees ached. But my heart? It buzzed, like it hadn't in years. I imagined the look on his face when he opened the door. I pictured him saying, "Mom, you came," and pulling me into a hug. I imagined sitting at his table, watching him carve turkey with that same clumsy grip he had when he was 10, the way he used to spill gravy everywhere and blame the cat. I held on to that picture the whole ride, but when I arrived, tired, smiling, casserole still warm in my lap, Ryan didn't open the door. A woman did, thin, blonde, younger than I expected. She looked me up and down, then said flatly, "You must be his mother." No hug, no smile, just a glance at my worn sweater like it offended her. Ryan eventually came to the door, but his eyes didn't light up. They flickered, like I was a glitch in his expensive software. Still, I smiled, because that's what moms do. We show up, even when no one's waiting, and even when we're about to learn, we never really left. We were just being slowly erased. A vase can be replaced. A mother can't. The entryway to Ryan's condo was like stepping into another world. Marble floors, chrome railings, a painting on the wall that looked like someone had spilled paint on purpose and called it art. I stood there in my best cardigan, holding that casserole dish with both hands like it might anchor me to something. His wife, Emily, barely spoke as she gestured toward the living room, then disappeared into a hallway. Ryan followed a minute later, phone in hand, half smiling like he'd just remembered I existed. "Hey, Ma," he mumbled. "Didn't know you were still coming." I forced a chuckle. "Well, I left a few messages, but I figured you were busy." He didn't deny it, just nodded, eyes already back on his phone. Dinner was strange. His friends and business partners sat around a long glass table, sipping wine and talking about equity rounds and scaling. I didn't understand half of it. I just sat at the corner, trying not to spill anything on the velvet runner. No one touched the sweet potato casserole. I excused myself to the kitchen. The air smelled of rosemary and distance. I started cleaning up. Habit, I guess. That's when I saw the pedestal in the hallway. Tall, slim, fragile-looking. On top sat a pale blue vase with gold accents, looking too delicate for its own good. I turned too fast. Maybe it was the arthritis in my knee. Maybe I wasn't steady. Maybe I was just tired. But my elbow bumped the edge and the vase, it crashed like thunder. Everyone came running. Ryan's face drained of color, then flushed red. "That was worth $10,000, he hissed. "I'm so sorry, baby," I whispered, heart pounding. "I tripped, I'll pay." "With what?" he snapped. "You live on Social Security and gumbo." That one hit deep. Then came the worst part. He turned to Emily and said, "Get her a hotel or something." No discussion, no asking, just dismissal. He didn't shout, he didn't throw things. He just decided I no longer belonged. Have you ever felt unwanted in a place you helped build? If you've been through something like this, you're not alone. Share your story below. I read every comment. I stood there quiet. Not because I had nothing to say, but because I knew. Once a child starts seeing their parent as disposable, words won't change a thing. I didn't cry. Not yet. That would come later. But right then, I did the only thing I could. I walked away. He didn't just close the door. He made sure it locked behind me. The cab dropped me off 2 blocks from home. It was well past midnight by the time I stepped out. Casserole dish cold in my lap, suitcase dragging behind me like a dead limb. Baton Rouge was quiet that time of night, just the hum of street lamps and a far-off barking dog. I stood at my porch for a full minute before I could make myself reach for the key. The house was exactly as I left it, dim, still, a little too quiet. The smell of old wood and cinnamon hung in the air like a memory. I set my things down, turned on one lamp in the living room, and sat. For a long time, I didn't move. I kept seeing his face, that blank expression when I tried to explain, the way he waved his hand like brushing off a mistake. Only the mistake was me. I didn't cry that night. I wanted to, but it was like the tears had dried up halfway home. What filled the space instead was something heavier than sadness, heaviness that settled into the bones, into the silence between ticking clock hands. I made tea the way Martin used to, black with a dash of honey, and I sat at the kitchen table with my hands wrapped around the cup, like it could warm something more than just my fingers. That's when I saw the box, a dusty yellowed accordion folder tucked in the corner of the shelf. Legal stuff from years ago, mostly things from when Martin passed. I pulled it down without thinking, just needing something to look at, something to remind me that I still had a life before tonight. Inside were old tax forms, life insurance papers, and a folder labeled LeBlanc Tech Investment Agreement. My heart slowed. I remembered the day like it was yesterday. Ryan had come over with a laptop, a binder full of projections, and a voice full of hope. He needed seed money. I had $130,000 from Martin's pension and some savings. We signed the paperwork right there in this kitchen, over coffee and beignets. Back then, he'd kissed my cheek and said, "Don't worry, Ma, you won't regret it." I opened the document, hands shaking. 51% ownership, my name. Right there, on paper, in black ink. All those years, I thought I'd been erased. Turns out I was still holding the pen. Turns out the paperwork still had my name on it. The next morning, I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of weak coffee and that old investment folder still open in front of me. I kept rereading the same line over and over again. Majority ownership. Martha J. LeBlanc, 51%. I hadn't thought about that day in years, back when Ryan was full of ambition and wide-eyed charm. He'd sat right where I was now, pitching me on his big dream. "Just a little help to get started," he'd said. "You'll always be part of this, Mom." I didn't do it for profit. I did it because that's what mothers do when their kids believe in something. But now, that old promise looked a lot more like leverage. And after what he'd done, after the coldness, the humiliation, I realized I wasn't just part of the business. I was the business. I wasn't sure what to do next. It had been years since I'd looked at a contract, and most of the legal words might as well have been Greek. So I called someone I hadn't spoken to in a long time, Walter Dubois, our family's old attorney, the kind of man who still sent Christmas cards with gold trim. He came over that afternoon, gray suit, leather briefcase, same sharp eyes he had when Martin and I bought our first house. I slid the folder across the table. "Tell me what this means," I said quietly. He read in silence, nodding once, twice. Then he looked up. "It means you're still the majority shareholder, Martha, which means you have control, if you want it." I sat back, hands folded in my lap. What does control look like? Walter didn't hesitate. "If you chose to, you could remove Ryan as CEO, freeze accounts, call for a board review. He never filed a restructuring. Legally, you still hold the gavel." There was a long silence. The tea kettle whistled behind us. I looked out the window at the garden Martin had planted. Wildflowers had taken over since he passed, a little messy, a little stubborn, just like me. And right then, I realized I didn't want revenge. I wanted a reset. He slammed the door in my face, but he left the company's front door wide open, so I nodded, just once. "Then let's start with the accounts," I said. "And Walter, don't warn him. Let it surprise him. He took me for weak. I just took my time." The official paperwork went out the following Tuesday. No press release, no drama, just a certified envelope sent by Walter's office to Ryan's downtown headquarters, along with a polite notice of temporary account suspension and executive removal pending internal review. Walter said he expected screaming, but instead it was radio silence. I pictured Ryan staring at the letter with that same look he gave me when I broke that vase. More confused than angry, like he couldn't believe something in his life had the audacity to not revolve around him. I didn't take joy in it. I really didn't. What I felt was stillness. A kind of quiet balance I hadn't felt in years. While the lawyers handled the legal side, I turned back to the part of me I'd buried under shame. The part that still knew how to build. Not tech companies, not algorithms, but warmth. I cleared out the old front room in my house, the one Martin used as a music room. I painted the walls, put up a chalkboard menu, and bought a second-hand espresso machine off Craigslist. Maison Martha opened quietly on a Saturday morning. No fanfare, just cornbread, gumbo, and sweet coffee in chipped cups. At first it was just neighborhood folks, tired nurses, retired teachers, a young couple with a newborn. But word spread. People came for the food, sure. But they stayed for the conversation, the stories, the quiet way I remembered their names and favorite orders. And every time I ladled out another bowl of stew, I felt a little stronger. Not younger, not flashier, just real. One afternoon, a woman in scrubs said to me, "Your cafe feels like someone left the porch light on for me." I smiled. That's because it's still on. Meanwhile, Ryan kept trying to call. Texts, emails, even an overnight letter with urgent stamped across the front. I didn't respond. What was there to say? He taught me what it feels like to be disposable. So now he could learn what it feels like to be excluded. Not out of spite, out of self-respect. This wasn't about taking anything from him. It was about finally taking something back. My voice, my space, and the seat I'd paid for years ago. With trust, patience, and $130,000 in savings. He closed his door. I built my own. Spring came early that year. The garden outside my house bloomed with wild violets and basil I never remembered planting. The porch creaked in the wind like an old friend sighing. I was folding aprons for the Saturday rush at Maison Martha when Walter called. "It's official," he said. "Board voted you hold the seat permanently." I smiled. Not wide, not triumphant, just enough to feel it settle deep in my bones. 2 days later, Ryan showed up. I saw his car through the window before he knocked. Still flashy, still spotless. He stood on my porch like a boy who wasn't sure if he was in trouble. He looked thinner, paler, tired in a way you can't fix with coffee. I opened the door, wiping flour from my hands. "Mom," he started, eyes already glassy. "I didn't think you'd actually go through with it. I didn't think you'd throw me out," I answered softly. He swallowed hard. I panicked. "The business it's falling apart. Investors are backing out. I need help." I nodded slowly. "I believe you." His eyes lifted, hopeful. "But that's your lesson now, not my burden." He blinked. "So, you won't reverse it?" "No," I said. "And I'm not angry. I'm just done being forgotten." There was no yelling, no drama, just a stillness that settled over us like dust on the windowsill. He stood there for a moment longer, as if waiting for something else, but I had nothing left to give. I walked back inside. The cafe smelled of fresh bread and brewed chicory, a regular waved from her usual table. I tied my apron again, picked up a plate of catfish and greens, and walked it over with a smile. Behind me, the bell above the front door jingled as Ryan left. Have you ever found peace after someone mistreated you? Without needing to fight back? Tell me in the comments. I promise, your story matters more than you think. And if this one made you feel something, share it. Maybe another mother out there needs to hear that quiet strength is still strength. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want applause. I just wanted my life back. And that's exactly what I got. Not because someone gave it to me, but because I finally stopped asking.